Hello from Detroit by way of Dearborn. I am John Pollock alongside who else but Wai Ting. And at 2:20 in the morning, we are just bursting with energy. And we said, you know what? Sleep is for suckers because we have a SummerSlam show to review that we attended hours and hours ago. And this show went hours and hours. Maybe a record for an 8-match card for the length that it went. But here we are to chat about all of our adventures over to Ford Field. And Wai, how are you?
Doing okay considering how long of a day it's been. It is currently 2:20. We literally just drove back into Dearborn from the press conference. Well, John went to the press conference. Traffic was really crazy getting out.
Were you driving around or were you just stationary during
I was
that?
stationary. So traffic was pretty awful going in anyway, and for that reason I parked I would say a 15-minute walk out. Because it was cheaper too, because it was $60, right next to the building, and then I parked a bit further out at about $20. But still, it was crazy getting out. So the press conference ended up helping out, to be honest with you.
Okay, well, I'm glad that was the case for you. It was a wild scene. This completely had a WrestleMania level of just craziness that comes with a big stadium level event. And I was in the city pretty much all day long, and it was just, of course, we're right next to Ford Field, so it was just all I can imagine is that the economy of Detroit is completely supported by pro wrestling t-shirts this weekend.
Mm-hmm. Well, just even out in Dearborn at our hotel, I feel like it's all wrestling fans here. So it does feel like it's a WrestleMania level sort of atmosphere in the city. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What did you think of Ford Field, the location?
The location or the building itself?
The building, the stadium.
I thought it was nice. I mean, to be quite honest, they all kind of start looking the same after a while, It was big, and the inside, the corridors are pretty similar. Why?
I was just curious your thoughts on
I have no complaints. No, it felt nicely run. Yeah. Did you have anything?
It's a stadium. It did not have a whole lot of a personality to me. It kind of was a big box. That's what it felt like I was in. Not anything too negative to say about it, but it's I'll tell you, it's no Comerica Park.
Yes, because ambitious as you are, you actually decided to sit out in the sun for a baseball game before your long day at SummerSlam.
Listen, as soon as I realized the Tigers were in town to play, I realized, yes, this is going to be a daunting task to do on Saturday when there was going to be a very late night / early morning, as we attest to at 2:30 in the morning. But I would have been kicking myself if I did not go. So I ventured out. Wai was not going to take the plunge on this, which was fine. We got to we separated on Saturday, and this is my quick story. Okay. So dude, it is hot as hell outside. It was really damn hot today. And I'm going out. And so I'm not kidding. I was probably one of 6 people that I saw at this park wearing pants. I was one of the few that had pants on. And on the way there, I'm in my Uber and I grab a coffee at the front desk here. And we're going in the Uber. And I look down and I've spilt coffee all over my white shirt. And I just look like a slob. I just look like a total slob. And this Uber, they have these wipes in the back. So it's I'm furiously trying to clean my shirt. These coffee stains are not coming out. And I just I can't look like this. It just looks terrible. So I get to the stadium. I buy a sweet ticket last minute. You want to go? You grab a single ticket right as the game's about to start. I got a 6th row seat in between these giant groups. They were never going to sell this. It was $60 for a 6th row ticket. It's I paid more for the Jays game last week in the 500. So it was tremendous. So I go in and I buy the first Tigers shirt I see. So dude, in the just scorching heat, I'm in my jeans and I'm wearing 2 t-shirts for this entire game. And, but dude, I had the best time at this game. It was so much fun. This park was amazing. It was, I do like the renovated Rogers Center that they have made the changes to that I got to see last weekend. But this park is another level. Like they had all these historical monuments and little exhibits of the Tigers of over 120 years. And so I sat in my 6th row seat for like the first 6-7 innings, and then I wandered around the stadium, and then I watched the remainder of the game way up in the bleachers where it was much more. I don't like sitting around people. I'm squeezed in there. So I got to do the WH Park and go up there. And
that's insane. Like as I was passing through, I heard like because the baseball game ended like what would you say, like 2 hours,
about 4ish,
like 3 hours before SummerSlam, and people passing me were like, "Wow, imagine if somebody went to the Tigers game and then went to SummerSlam." Like as if like to say like how ridiculous of an idea it was, and this guy,
buddy, it's the press conference. That's the real that really tests your limit.
The
okay,
trifecta, isn't it?
Yeah, but I had so much fun at that Tigers game. Like
Good.
I've never gone to a sporting event other than like wrestling by myself, and it was like by the 3rd inning, dude, I put my music on to like watch the game. Didn't have to engage in like I just got to chill out. Okay. It was like you
went to a movie by yourself.
It was mental
recently?
Relaxation. That's what it was.
You went to go see the Barbie movie by yourself recently, and then now you're watching baseball by yourself. And
what did you get up to? Wait, how was the pool?
I had a beautiful swim at the hotel pool, and then after that I just set up here, and I visited actually Third Man Records, which is Jack White's little sort of a vinyl production studio / like gift shop. So didn't have a ton of free time, but did that in town, and then just kind of walked my way through, bought something, a little bit of a souvenir for the spouse. So yeah, had a nice little free afternoon.
I enjoyed Detroit today. Yesterday was more so we were just arriving and then going straight out to Harpo's and such. But today I feel like I got to, after the game, I had a bunch of time to kill, so I just checked out.
You caught a nice bit of sun,
wandered around. Oh yeah, you can see me, dude. I'm like
your ears specifically.
Well, you know what? You gotta sacrifice. I had my hat, and that was it. I was out in the sun. Yeah. No
SummerSlam, right?
That was it. That was it. All right, let's get into the show because there's a lot to break down here. So we had, first of all, the attendance that they listed. The number was somewhere around 59,000. The last update from WrestleTix was just after 7 p.m., 51,292 distributed. So we can refer to upcoming Polestar data and eventually the key performance indicators in the 3rd quarter. So there you can and you can judge that against the 59,000 number. Regardless, they moved a lot of tickets in this last week that got them, from 44, 45 and sending them over 51. And I'm certain in that last hour in the lead up to SummerSlam, they probably moved some last minute tickets as well. There was a ton of buzz in the city for this show. And granted, I was in the downtown core where it was just nonstop wrestling fans. And they also had this street festival going on for SummerSlam. So you had the SummerSlam store, and then you had this whole block just cordoned off, and it had like you could go through these exhibits where they had like the DX tank and Undertaker's hearse and all this stuff, and just all these little kiosks with like WWE licensees attached to it. So it was much more than you get for just a typical non-WrestleMania event. So they really did just take over this section. And between the Tigers game getting out and all the wrestling fans congregating so early, like, dude, by 5:30 p.m., this area was swarmed with people. And the first match wasn't until 8 p.m. Yeah. These were people that were just so hungry to get in and buy as much merchandise as they could possibly fit. And I'm sure they did a killer on merch at this show because they had hours before the show started to just spend.
Yeah. And I saw throughout at least the downtown core a lot of people buying the I guess Detroit specific merchandise too. They had
that's really smart. They've been doing that in all the cities. That's very smart.
It's smart, and it's almost like I'm almost flabbergasted at how easy it is because they are the most low effort like t-shirts you could imagine. Like instead of like NWO,
Detroit, Brock City.
That's actually even a bit more clever.
Okay.
Like more often it's like, blank, like, they had Motor City 316, the DW,
The Detroit World
the
Order.
DWO. It's like shit that I'm almost like I'd be embarrassed to have come up with if like that you're marketing. But that's what people want. People just want like the simplest thing, with their own city's name on it that they can only get here. So
if we have learned one thing this weekend, it's that I'm not going to shake my head at any merchandise choices WWE makes, where I often would ask the question, who would buy this? The answer is lots. Okay.
Yep.
Maybe not every shirt is going to be your biggest seller, but dude, there is a group of people out there, they will buy the craziest shirts that you just would not imagine you could absolutely
if it's on sale, somebody's gonna buy it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this was also another event that, I mean, they had a ton of sponsors. They said this was their largest sponsorship revenue for a SummerSlam. And they had Slim Jim, which they have promoted their biggest sponsorship deal ever. And then you had a Rocket Mortgage, C4 Energy, Mike's Harder Lemonade, a returning champion, and of course DraftKings among the big sponsors on this show. Not Prime, although Prime did get some real estate on this show, maybe unintentionally. So Byron Saxton and Titus O'Neil, they kicked off the kickoff was nothing but the panel and Byron Saxton and Titus O'Neil going over the charity work done in the city this week. And that takes us into the opening video, voiced by Detroit royalty, Kid Rock, as we hear the revolutionary sounds of Ba Wida Ba in 2023. And I couldn't fully hear this video package, but Kid Rock starts referencing, and we get highlights of the first SummerSlam from 1988. It's like, okay, we're going back to the first one. And then he just randomly starts referring to the 1995 one in Pittsburgh and 2013.
I believe the gist of the video package, again, it was a bit hard to hear just like from our vantage point with the sound system in the live setting, but I believe it was something to the effect of like to know where you're going, you have to know where you came from. And I guess it was just like running through
random
a brief
cities,
a history of
years?
SummerSlam.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just wondering why it was like 95 of all years.
I mean, I thought the biggest one in memory, especially if you're going to go to the past, would have been Wembley, right? And
I was thinking 93, they were in Auburn Hills, Michigan. Like that was the last time SummerSlam was in Michigan. But these were like just random like they're all essentially randoms, I guess. Yeah. If you're just going to isolate three out of, other than the first, they had these two. But anyway, and then we got into the current card. But yeah, that was the gist of the video. You need to know where you've been.
Good video, like as always, and anytime you get, I guess a local celebrity, and Kid Rock is somebody that's been long associated with them. It makes a lot of sense.
The show had to start off with Logan Paul and Ricochet because Logan Paul had a busier night than we did. He was going to be finishing this match and then getting on a jet and going to Dallas, where he in fact made it for his brother Jake Paul's fight, and we'll talk about that later. But they came out, and this was not as though they were just going to race through this match to get Logan out of there. They went 18 minutes to start the show. Tons of heat for Logan Paul throughout this match, and his heel mannerisms are just, he's tremendous in this role. And also subtle incorporations of Samantha Irvin, who they were going to reaction shots as Ricochet was being beaten down and at one point hit with a neck breaker onto the edge of the apron. We saw Ricochet bring out his people's moonsault that I don't think we've ever seen him do in WWE, but used to be a staple of his. Paul, some of his big moves included a Spanish fly off the apron to the floor, and they didn't stick the landing where there were Ricochet slipped and they were supposed to land on their feet, and that was going to be one of the big shocking moments.
Also a reference to the Rumble, or sorry, the Money in the Bank spot.
Without a table this time. Yeah. And then Paul hits a buckshot lariat, but it's from the ring to the floor, which this guy could have blown out his knee trying this, and kind of planted his legs before hitting it. And then a fan conveniently has a bottle of Prime that he grabs and just starts drinking there on screen. And it was worth noting, like we were bringing up the fact that this C4 Energy is sponsoring them, and they've got like these WWE themed energy drinks that you essentially are, I mean, Prime would be a competitor of this energy drink.
It would be a bit of a conflict of interest. I'm sure, C4 wasn't happy about it, but I wonder if like Logan Paul has his own special deal, I mean, that he gets to get one of these spots per match, perhaps. I'm sure they had to clear something.
Can't get that exclusive.
Yeah.
Ricochet then hit a reverse neck breaker off of the top, and there's a backflip off of the turnbuckle, and Ricochet catches him. Paul catches him and turns into a tornado DDT for a big near fall. We see Ricochet come back with the recoil and goes for the shooting star press, lands on the knees, and Paul cradles him for a 2 count. Paul hit a very impressive springboard frog splash. Crowd was very hot at this point. There's a Benadryller from Ricochet, rolling DVD, and then a moonsault off the turnbuckle for a 2 count, misses with the 630. And then this mysterious figure slides the brass knuckles onto Logan Paul when the referee's back is turned, and he waffles Ricochet with the brass knucks and pins him in 18 minutes. And then Logan Paul is taunting Samantha Irvin and played a fantastic heel. And I guess we have this mystery of who this person was that assisted Logan Paul.
I mean, I'm assuming it was somebody from his crew, right?
Like that's what I thought, but unless
did the internet know? Did you look that up?
I looked and I didn't see much, but I was having terrible internet problems.
Chat room, so thank you everybody watching us live at this late hour. If you guys know who that person was, let us know. I thought it was a very good match. Was it the most viral match of all time? I mean, I don't know what they were going for.
There was some really impressive stuff in this match, but I almost felt putting that label on it. Like, I don't know if we had that one big defining moment. Like, they didn't have their Royal Rumble spot.
I was expecting like something similar to the Roman spot with like the selfie camera, something that would create a clip that would actually go viral.
They didn't even use a phone.
Like I don't recall anything of the sort, like that.
Maybe Logan Paul's going to play the finish as like the most viral moment where he knocks out Ricochet. And
yeah, I guess so. It could be could just be a
storyline
line. Yeah, sure. I thought it was a very good match. I think of the sort that you would have expected from these two. You have maybe the best high flyer right now in the company in a Ricochet, and somebody in a Logan Paul who is really a celebrity who could do a lot of that incredibly athletic stuff. And I thought Ricochet brought him to, I think, a very good match. Was there anything about the match itself at this point, like in Logan's career, that I think like shocked me? Not necessarily. It was just like, it was very impressive. But I wouldn't necessarily say it had like as big of an impact as maybe like some of the prior Logan Paul matches, but still it was, I think like, especially for the length, consistently. And
it was 18 minutes and it was like a lot of his like in between stuff. It's like he looked very impressive to me. Like, this was a very spectacular match. It was, I would put this higher on the card in terms of how it performed. It was not my match of the show, but it was a really strong opener and longer than I thought it would be, going 18. So Logan Paul did get on the jet and then headed to Dallas at the American Airlines Center, where Jake Paul won his fight by decision against Nate Diaz. We obviously have not seen the fight, but it sounded like Nate Diaz put up like had a good accounting of himself in his first boxing fight, but Jake Paul did win by unanimous decision, and Logan Paul was there. They had the video of him. The gimmick he did was he didn't change out of his ring gear from the match with Ricochet, so you got to have him. I guess he came out in the ring gear in 2 separate arenas across the country from each other.
It actually is very impressive, and I'd love to know.
Honestly, that's kind of the most viral moment that he pulled that off. And
yeah,
we had the flight tracker as well to see if he was going to make it.
That's it. Yeah, that's right. So, hooray for Jets, I guess. Yeah, no, he did really well.
Sheamus pulled up in a monster truck, giving us all memories of the last time there was a monster truck duel on a wrestling pay-per-view in Detroit, and no one fell off Cobo Hall in this version. And the second match on the show, Cody Rhodes against Brock Lesnar. What do you think about the placing of this match in this spot?
I did not mind it whatsoever. I think overall the card was structured like well. Starting off with like, even if Logan Paul didn't have to fly over, to Texas to go to his brother's match, I think starting off with like the high flying celebrity match is a good idea. To follow that up with not a title match, but a match that I think has an equal amount of interest as almost as a title match, I thought was a really good way to like get people really situated into the show. In fact, I would say between this and the match following this, these were to me the loudest the crowd were all evening.
This was, I thought, a really, really well put together match. This was a total like storytelling type of match. And we begin where immediately Brock hits him with a German suplex, and Cody comes back with the disaster kick. And they're starting at the usual fast-paced Brock match, and they're pacing this like you're expecting this to go under 10 minutes, and they went much longer than that. So as this would escalate, you saw Cody start to get thrown, and Brock is just smiling as he's having his way, tossing him around, and then deadlifts him from the mat into a German, continues it with another, and then Cody starts being knocked to the floor, and Brock is willing to just take the count out win. And it would just be this continual struggle of Cody to not stay down and get back to his feet, further frustrating Brock each time he would get up and get back into the ring. So the violence would escalate from just getting tossed off the apron, clothesline to the floor, to suddenly he ups it to an F5 on the floor, and Cody gets back in at 9. Then an F5 onto the desk. Again, he's in at 9. And this felt like it was an influence of that Lesnar-Cena match that I think is one of the more remembered matches. Like, here was Brock taking all of this, and it was like just
Cody. You mean
Brock taking like the offense of the match.
Right, okay.
And so eventually Brock goes back down to the floor, and he takes the stairs away from Cody, and then Cody pops off the shoulders, and he sends Brock into the post and hits him with the stairs, hits him with a disaster kick in the ring and a Cody cutter. And at this point, this audience is so behind him because they have watched him sell and sell and sell. But the comeback, the audience was all behind him, and Brock locks on the Kimura, and Cody's selling was great here. He finally gets to the rope, and Lesnar gets shoved into an exposed buckle with his arm, and Cody applies the Kimura. And dude, Brock was excellent selling this. Like, he had the faces going red, and he is so close to tapping. At one point, he puts his hand down, but then lifts up Cody, slams him free, but the arm is damaged, and he goes for one last F5, which gets countered into 3 consecutive crossroads, and Cody wins in 17 minutes and 30 seconds. I thought this one was excellent. I thought this and another match were my toss-up for match of the night, but I thought this was terrific, easily the best of their 3, and I thought this was one of Brock's better singles matches in a long time. And you're right, the crowd was super loud for this one.
Yeah. I thought it was a really great exhibition of like pacing here. I felt this was a real awesome match to, study, because you get to see with every instance of any sort of physical effort how these guys were able to maximize every single reaction. And I thought they came up with a really, really brilliant way of like extending a Brock match. Taking your usual Brock Lesnar heavily aggressive, physically taxing formula, but again, like drawing it out, and at the same time not like just spending time, but increasing the crowd's energy by telling a story of Cody's relentless sort of like will to give up, and getting stronger and stronger every time, and then Brock coming back and hitting a bigger move every single time. I've never really kind of seen somebody like make the use of like count out teases maybe this effectively in the WWE. It's something I we're used to in New Japan, but in the WWE, I thought this was really well done. Much of it was like spent teasing these countouts, and again, in terms of just like physical activity, I think Cody probably took a lot of damage, sure, but I think we've seen Brock matches where like his opponents have taken a lot more, and they've have not captivated the crowd to this duration. So they were really also good at like conveying narratives to the crowd throughout. You start the match off by asking the crowd, can Cody survive these countouts? And then you ask, can Cody survive the Kimura when Brock introduces it? And then the story becomes, can Brock Lesnar survive the Kimura because of the injured shoulder story that they were telling? So reactions in my section were really loud for this one. We had adults screaming at the top of their lungs for
We should explain
Cody.
where we were, because I was in the press box and you went out to sit in the crowd.
Yes, I did the Yeah, I did I just found, sort of like empty seat somewhere, and I just sat, and I sat in front of some very loud people. So
How were Braden and Davey holding up at this point?
I don't know. I didn't see them, but I'm sure some other people did.
So after the match, they go nose to nose, and Brock extends his hand, shaking hands with Cody, and then a hug is exchanged between the two, and Brock gives Cody the big endorsement to the crowd, and then Cody hugs his mom, who is in the front row, and makes his way to the back. A very it felt here like a kind of end for Brock, end for this program, and probably another Brock departure. Like, this is something that the Brock character, they don't put out and do this kind of post-match deal. So
didn't Levesque say that this was unplanned from Lesnar?
I mean, it's what Paul Levesque.
Oh, you don't believe that?
I mean, it could be accurate. It could be not. But I will say this: the one glaring issue of this program is, I do feel like, to fully end this program, like, they have never fully explained the turn and why that happened. Every fan has kind of inserted well, he did it for this or this or this. That's never been explained.
Yeah. And at this point, like, with Brock's sort of so like infrequent appearances and infrequent speaking like opportunities, I don't know if we'll ever know the answer to it. Put it in, and who cares?
Maybe he
honestly
thought Cody won the title the night before. He didn't stay for the end, and he was confused.
Honestly, that was definitely a fumble of the entire story in hindsight, but they made 3 really, really excellent matches. And I think, considering
and this one, I mean, like, you have the story here. It's like Cody survived everything Brock threw at him. He survived the Kimura. He survived the F5. He survived all the suplexes. And it was like, this was the big endorsement of Cody. Like, this was, again, a like cementing of Cody as the champion in waiting.
It's kept Cody feeling like a main eventer without being him involved in the title picture. And that's kind of like what the prestige of like a Brock Lesnar feud does for you. But I mean, Cody has just been excellent. He really has to be the one telling the bulk of the story, because again, Brock doesn't really cut promos. He delivers incredible physicality, but it takes a great baby face in order to actually turn it into a story. And I think Cody's been able to do that. So what are we, like, 4 months into this program? I mean, they took up a good chunk of the year, so what do you think is next for both guys?
I think Brock probably, this certainly felt like a departure for Brock. Like, he doesn't need to go into something immediate. I guess we'll see around Saudi Arabia time. That would seem logical to have Brock back. And for Cody, I'm expecting some kind of angle on Monday to send him off into his next direction.
There are going to be a lot of questions in storyline about why Cody isn't going for Seth Rollins' championship. And Cody, in multiple press conferences now at this point, has pretty much alluded to saying he doesn't want the Rollins title. He wants the Roman title. He wants to go back to WrestleMania to
his deal is, he's not going to say what he's going after, but everyone knows what it is. And it's a weird deal, and you have to thread this needle of Cody on this path toward of this lengthier story they're telling, while also not degrading the championship that is on your show. And it's,
how do you do that?
I would like to see how, because logic would be Rollins and Cody coming out of this. Your 2 big winners, they should be facing off next. Like, that would be logical. And if you can't go that direction, you need a hell of a reason to explain why Cody is not going in that direction. And if you do something where it's someone returning or someone taking out Cody, does this start to feel like just this? You did it with the Lesnar program, and now is this just a lame duck period for Cody, and we're going to get another 2-3 match series?
Right. I think as long as the opponent is attractive enough, I don't think audiences are going to maybe ask too many questions. I think, like, wink, wink, like, we all know that they're probably keeping Cody like warm until WrestleMania season. And I think we all just ask to be entertained in the meantime, So who are the candidates, you think?
Marseille.
Could, yeah. We had a match with Dominic, and that was relatively successful. I guess Balor at this point would be free as well if they want to, do that. Are there any other like big names? I'm more interested in like what Brock's got going on. Yeah, he could take time off, but coming back, does he come back at this point as a baby face or as a heel? Because I thought he'd be the one going for a Rollins championship, and I guess he still can. But although you'd think he would have to, although if you're Brock Lesnar, you don't really have to do much to just justify a title match. So
yeah, I think he has to be. I think there has to be some kind of segment involving Cody and Seth Rollins coming out of this, and you either have them tied together in some form or fashion, or you have a reason for them to go in separate directions, because that's sort of the natural pairing that you see coming out of a show like this. They were plugging WrestleMania throughout the show, and man, did Philadelphia get booed by the fans in Detroit. They were not happy that Philadelphia is getting WrestleMania. Time for the Slim Jim Battle Royal, and I think I got all the participants here. Santos Escobar, Grayson Waller, the Alpha Academy, Cameron Grimes, JD McDonough, you remember him?
Yes, I do.
Sheamus, LA Knight, Rick Boog, Shinsuke Nakamura, Apollo Crews, Karrion Kross, United States Champion Austin Theory in a Battle Royal, Matt Riddle, Ciampa, Kaiser, Vinci, Viking Raiders, Nakamura, Bronson Reed, Butch, Rich Holland, and then entrances for The Miz and AJ Styles. So this was our 25-man Slim Jim Battle Royal, where it turns out they're fighting for a commercial.
Yeah, we didn't know the stipulation. I guess that was for a reason, because well, listen, you don't really win anything, but you do win the opportunity to go back in time to
remember that the sign for at WrestleMania 18, they're fighting over shampoo.
Yes,
we needed that guy tonight. They're fighting over pepperoni.
Yeah. Well, this is actually a pretty legitimate thing to want. It's basically to be the face of Slim Jim.
So if there was any doubt, LA Knight was so popular this weekend all over. Like you were hearing the Yaz breaking out all over the place
at the GCW show.
At the GCW show, and I mean, when I was around downtown, I mean, it was all LA Knight. There was an individual who had like this loudspeaker, and he was like he was like one of those people who's like yelling about God and stuff on the street, and it's like Jesus. So all the wrestling fans, he would stop, and in between they go, yeah. And then this guy was getting a kick out of it. And it was like, the Lord condemns us. Yeah. It's just ridiculous as wrestling fans interact with non-fans. So anyway, LA Knight got his own entrance as well. Gigantic reaction. And then the final entrant is Omos, who MVP introduces. So he's the last entrant, and you're thinking like Omos is going to win this thing in the end, but he was just the big giant to be tackled. And not going to go through everyone here. I thought Chad Gable was the standout in this battle royal and elevated this battle royal from just being a collection of eliminations to like he did some cool stuff in this. But I mean, this largely was just a battle royal full of a lot of guys. There were so many people here and just tons of eliminations throughout. We saw
it's always a good use of Omos, to have him come here and get the special entrance and just get that special spotlight, if even just for a few minutes here, being in a battle royal.
They ganged up on Omos, a bunch of them, all delivering the 10 beats led by Sheamus onto Omos. And then Omos at one point lifts up Butch and lifts up Riddle like they are two children, and he just throws them over the top, and they could not feel like more non-entities than in that moment.
Same with JD McDonough and Apollo Crews, two guys.
JD McDonough was
they were the first two eliminated.
I missed their eliminations. That's how inconsequential they were. So they were just in and out. So that there is like, it feels like
you need bodies, and unfortunately those two are just bodies right now.
And McDonough, like you were what circumstance.
I mean, I get the sense maybe they're maybe a lot of like what's going on with Judgment Day was not expected. They don't maybe want to bother with the chemistry of the four right now, because all four of them are doing so well. But that's always a chip they can play.
And the Money in the Bank story has sort of become the focus right around the time they sort of dropped the JD aspect cold after you had the like sort of Bálor subtly scouting him. Miz and Waller teamed up for a combo skull-crushing finale, rolling stunner, and then they teased like an alliance between those two.
That was kind of cute because obviously those two are almost sort of like different generations of the same character, and right now counterparts on two different brands. And it's always nice, like on these kind of co-promoted shows that where you can have these nice little moments. And it was almost cute where like the two of them realize, I like this guy,
Everyone ganged up and they dumped Omos out. So that was the elimination of one of the monsters, because you had a bunch of the big guys in here with Bronson Reed, Karrion Kross, Sheamus to a degree. So Sheamus clotheslines Waller out. AJ delivers a Pele, eliminating Kross, and then Otis. No, this isn't right. I have it Gable was back body dropped out of the ring, and the crowd was somewhat disappointed then when Gable was eliminated. And then Knight does the guillotine spot, eliminating Reed over the top rope to the floor. So it's down to AJ, Sheamus, and LA Knight. And AJ goes for a phenomenal forearm, but before he can execute it, Kross grabs his leg from the floor after he's eliminated, and that distracts AJ, and Sheamus eliminates him with a brogue kick. So it's down to Knight and Sheamus, which was the match they did on SmackDown. Sheamus stops the blunt force trauma, and then he clotheslines Sheamus out in 12 minutes and 47 seconds, and LA Knight is the winner. Big pop, and they went with the most logical outcome that everyone saw coming, and for that reason, I thought they would go a different direction, and they in fact went with LA Knight.
Yeah, I think with LA Knight, coming off of the sort of a title tournament and then Money in the Bank, we're all just like wondering if they're continuing to play this game of like teasing us with like giving him something, like if they're using disappointment as a tactic to build him, and it's tonight was not the case for that. In fact, tonight was essentially an entire battle royal crafted around his sponsorship deal now with Slim Jim. Not necessarily sponsorship deal, but he's one of the new faces of he's like basically, I mean, along with Bianca Belair, I suppose, in this commercial, but I would say most at this point would probably associate LA Knight more with it, especially with his catchphrase, as like he's kind of taken the role of Macho Man Randy Savage.
With the catchphrase, I mean, it almost should have been like we connect the dots, like of what this Slim Jim sponsorship is going to entail, and with it being such a high dollar value, it makes sense that they want to have a sponsor, and he is fantastic for that.
Absolutely perfect, yeah. So I don't know how they introduced the commercial right afterwards, but how did they like? Do you know? On commentary, I'm curious, like how they went from the end of this battle royal to just, here's the guy who won this battle royal.
Turns out he just filmed the commercial in AI, and we have it at our disposal. Do you think that the people at Slim Jim are undervaluing the SEO value of Omos? And
Omos and a Slim Jim commercial, I'm sure that would have worked really well too. Yeah,
snap it to a Slim Jim. Omos.
No, it's clear, even if he's not winning a championship at this point,
he's won a commercial.
I think that's even more valuable, certainly, than the US championship at this point. The only thing I think the audience wants is confirmation that this company sees value in this guy. And I would say over the past month, he's been in prominent roles.
It's very evident. I mean, this is not one where they are fighting. It's like, dude, look at the merch they're putting out for him, giving him the entrances. He always gets mic time. Like, dude, they are aware. Is this guy in line to be champion? No. Like, that's why I'm not that concerned about
ages against him, and I don't know if they'll ever see him as somebody who can maybe like the Rollins championship, sure, but currently like as Cody and Roman Reigns are fighting over like the world championship, I don't see him there.
He's in a solid supporting role. Like, he's in a good role. I think people should
he was the most popular person on the entire show, I do have to say. And a U.S. championship is there for the taking at any point, but I almost feel like that might even degrade him at this point.
The next match to follow was the MMA rules match between Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler. So this is you can win by submission or stoppage, and they come.
So when did you hear about the rules? Did they announce that on SmackDown?
They announced the rules.
Okay. Because I was sitting with people that were very confused.
I think everyone was confused in this
Yeah,
match.
and I really feel like they should have announced it in the arena, because I don't know how many people would have even caught it on SmackDown. I mean, I watched SmackDown on 2X this week and I completely missed it.
I mean, I think there was more going for it. That, like, even if you didn't know the rules, it's like, okay, a submission, like, you know what a submission
They should have said
constitutes.
that though, but like MMA rules could be so many different
Dude, I
things.
was talking to fans who thought this was going to be a real MMA fight. It was like,
Sure.
and I guess like there's that confusion of like, hey, could they? When you hear Nate Diaz talking about they wanted to do a boxing fight with me and Logan Paul, and you have Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler, like I guess you could. Fans might assume they're doing a real fight or something, which they were not, but nonetheless. So here's my thought at the beginning of this. I think these two put a lot of thought into this match. Okay. I think that this was a case of taking a really ambitious idea to a WWE audience that I don't know if they were necessarily ready for it. And when I watched this, it was trying to do worked MMA with pro wrestling intertwined into it. And I just found it was a very hard acceptance from this audience that was checked out.
So is it too ambitious when they've done, Fight Pit in the past, which is like very MMA inspired? I mean, we recently saw on Raw Underground, to a much smaller degree, but Fight Pit I think has been successful even on the main roster. This was certainly maybe a bit different in that it was maybe more submission reliant. But no matter what, it didn't work. And I agree with everything you said. I think it's a style of professional wrestling that a WWE audience just doesn't want and doesn't care about. Beyond that, I was very curious to watch this match to see who this audience was going to treat as the babyface. And the answer was neither. They did not like either person. They did not care about either person. As much as you and I like maybe enjoyed the video on Monday, I don't think it had maybe a large enough effect on really anybody and their viewpoint of like, who they should be cheering for and who they should be caring about in this program.
Yeah, I think that this is one where I think they looked at this as a chance to try and present this in the way that
these two want.
Yeah, and I think the strength of Monday's videos were the fact that okay, you don't have a defined babyface heel, but hopefully you have sides formed of people that are behind Ronda, people that are behind Shayna, and maybe it was a case of just 1 week of video packages wasn't going to cement that. And at the start of this, like you could see, like Ronda puts the hands out for the glove touch, and Shayna's the one that walks off and won't touch gloves. And that's about as much as a tipping point as you were giving to an audience that I don't think you have like a large contingent of.
So wait, so you think that was supposed to signify Ronda as the babyface?
I think it was presenting Ronda as kind of like
but the whole build, certainly by the time you finish watching the videos, I felt it was very anyway. It doesn't matter. Like we can even
listen. I think there were a long list of issues that this affected, but I think more to the point is that worked MMA is extremely tough, and even if executed tremendously well, I don't know, especially for a WWE audience, if that's what they're looking for. Like the spot I hated the most in this was where the trainers come in to check on Shayna, and then Ronda throws the trainers around. I hated that, and yet that got the biggest reaction from this crowd. They reacted to the most pro wrestling spot.
Exactly. Yeah. Because
what does that tell you? Does the audience want this?
Well,
in a 50,000 seat stadium.
The problem is we haven't had an education process on the WWE to a WWE audience about like, not to even say like, would this have gotten over in, Josh Barnett's Bloodsport? Well, yes. Cause like they're
it would have been a different match.
People.
They wouldn't have been doing as elaborate and like, I don't think they would have been doing this type of, submission wrestling and just a lot of stuff. I think it would have been a much more like trying to replicate like an EBI match or something like
that. I basically bottom line, like it requires, I think, an educational process to lead a WWE audience possibly into this match on top of all the other issues that I think they had with just even building the story. But like, dude behind me was like, this is getting way too much MMA and I have to imagine like this was a match that the crowd was actually about to turn on before they, call for the finish. Can you explain something to me? Like, was there a standing 10 count or something like.
So
these are
that was my one of many problems with this, is that it was billed as an MMA rules match, and yet, you had
like Ronda knocks her down. Why can't she go for the ground?
This was like a TKO finish, and yet she was getting like a reprieve, and Ronda had to wait for her to get back to her feet. I'm like, what is this?
What MMA match has
this is like? You're
heard?
not like, are you catering to someone that even has a casual interest of MMA that follows it? That it was just like, it just did not make sense for that spot. I noted that as well. You had Ronda like continually going for like body shots and setting up the armbar, which is like, you would understand why you build things around the armbar. And then there's a step up knee that drills Baszler for the knockdown, but then the ref holds off Rousey. Like, this is a stoppage. She should have won the match.
Or Rousey should have been able to go and finish her.
It's at this point where I'm questioning the rules, because it was like, this would be like, I'm following this, and it's like, okay, you can have a stoppage win. I'm fine with that. But this was, okay, what does she have to do? There's no count going on.
It's almost as if like they were just kind of conflating like referee stoppage with like like a TKO in boxing, where like you have to back off to ask the actual participant if they're willing to give up, and that's just not how MMA has ever worked.
Rousey did her best Toby Amata tribute with an inverted triangle. She's delivering more body shots, and then Baszler lifts her up, and they land on the floor where the inverted triangle is broken, and they're checking on Baszler's arm as Ronda throws the trainers away in the corner. And again, the crowd reacted to this, and I just thought, this is just so goofy for what you're trying to get across. And yet the spot, I can't say like nothing was getting a reaction. And then I'm not saying the place like tore the roof off with this spot, but it was a reaction, at least where I was. And Ronda tries for the armbar. Baszler counters to the ankle lock, and then Rousey breaks that, going to apply a rear naked choke, but Baszler is out, and it's Baszler who takes the back, chokes out Ronda, who goes out cold at 7:26. And even in 7.5 minutes, I think largely that this audience really checked out of this match. It struggled in the building, and I think now you're hopefully trying to build something. This was, Ronda losing, and probably it looks like taking a sabbatical, if not longer at this point. We don't know what her future is going to be, but it seems like here was this program that had to get sped up, that got affected by her injury, and it was all designed to get Ronda this big win for her best friend, and Shayna gets this win. But it was certainly, I would say this was the worst match on the show.
Yeah. At least in terms of crowd reaction. And I maybe even hate to like give him that label, because there is clear effort.
I think the effort, I think the thought that went into this was significant. But again, sometimes you're ultimately going to be judged by, did it work or did it not work? And it's not because something failed, it doesn't mean that the effort was not there or they did not care. I think these two deeply cared about this program and presenting this. And I think in a different setting, different context, I think this could work. But there were some key things in this match that I certainly would have eliminated.
And I would say key things in the build up to it as well that I'm sure like probably affected what
we should have had tonight. We should have had at least a demonstration on Raw of Shayna just killing somebody. Like, you bring out Jessamine Duke and she beats her in 3 minutes, and we know what this match entails. Like, what does a stoppage look like? What does a submission finish look like?
And who knows, like if they actually had the time that they needed to tell a story like this, if you would have got some of that. I mean, this was all pretty much sped up in a month. I think,
but with the last month, should it have been just all promos? Like, when so much of the match was an experimental match, and that was a big failing of this match. And the promos, I mean, they had their own criticism with them. Like, I think so much was focused on the personal issue and not enough about like honestly, this probably should have just been then a straight up match.
I don't know if you could have just done everything, John. Like, I mean, I think they had enough trouble just getting people interested in the feud itself. And honestly, coming off of this, watching this, I don't even know if WWE themselves have much of an idea of what an MMA rules match is or should be. I don't think it was well conveyed to the audience, and it's too bad because, like, yeah, I do think a lot of effort and care and love was put into the design of the match, but it just did not get over for various reasons, and it was just almost kind of sad to see when they're going for each other's finishers that got no reaction, like usually when, so like we saw later on, like, Finn Balor hitting a pedigree, a huge pop. But it was at this point where, like, I think the crowd was either checked out or like they weren't into like this sort of like minuscule details of like finish submission changing into another submission. And they were, there were chants of like, this is boring. There were chants of, um like basically like when the match ended, when the referee, called for the stoppage, people were cheering because the match was over, and it was really unfortunate. It was really unfortunate, especially coming off of the two matches prior to this that were the loudest on the entire show.
Following that was a Gunther and Drew McIntyre for the Intercontinental Championship. So they didn't get 20 minutes, but they got close to 14. They started off with striking, and then we get the German suplexes from Gunther and Drew with the belly-to-belly suplexes. The first Claymore is ducked by Gunther, and he shotguns Drew into the corner, and Gunther avoids the Claymore, bails to the floor, and Drew hits a big dive, goes for the countdown, and Gunther cuts him off with another shotgun dropkick and a powerbomb for a 2 count. Gunther landed the splash, and then Drew catches his arm to prevent a chop, lands his own. They get into a chop battle. Drew ducks the last one, landing the Claymore as Gunther comes off the ropes and gets a near fall as Gunther kicks out of the Claymore. Drew then gets sent off the top and is crotched on the top rope. There's a splash from Gunther, big lariat, and the powerbomb keeps Drew down in 13 minutes and 43 seconds. They were going in with very high expectations. This wasn't the level of the triple threat at WrestleMania. I thought it was a very good match between the two. But it wasn't at the top of my list on this show.
No, compared to, I think I would say, maybe other iterations of like this grouping of like, Drew, Gunther, and Sheamus, this was probably on the weaker side. I think the Sheamus, certainly the Clash at the Castle match was much better than this one. And even the WrestleMania 3-way was better than this. And I think I might have had like, highest expectations for these two, just considering I think they're like their interactions with one another, even dating back to that Survivor Series, like way back when. But this didn't get to like that next level, and I do wonder how much of it the
Claymore kick out. I think they were approaching that. Like again, this was it was a very good match, and you're right. I think they were on the cusp of that, and I think if. Like again, this show, the way it was timed out, I mean, 8 matches. I just couldn't fathom it.
How long was this?
This was only 13:43.
And like that should be enough to like, I think lift the crowd to a certain level. For me, sitting from where I was, I expected these chops to be a lot louder. When you're watching a Gunther match, it's usually just like, like everybody, and that snaps you into the match, right? You didn't really hear that sound. I don't know how it came across on TV, but like I was kind of sitting in like the first deck, and you just like they were silent chops, and a lot of that I'm sure is the acoustics of the building itself. But man, Clash at the Castle was like at a pretty big place too, and that sounded plenty loud. But even beyond that, I failed. This was a little bit disappointing just because I expected this to be a very easy match of the night. Winner, if not at least a contender. And I don't even know if I put this like top 3,
It would be top 3 for me, but
there were louder moments for
a distance from 1 and 2 for me. Yeah. Seth Rollins against Finn Balor for the World Heavyweight Championship, and Balor jumps him before the bell, and he's got the word 7 written on the shoulder, right where the injury occurred at SummerSlam 2016. That was a cool little, nod to what the whole feud is
part of the story of the match and the character's motivation heading into this.
Balor is working on the arm of Rollins in the beginning.
The shoulder, really specifically. Like targeting the shoulder.
He's going after, he's going after and wants to deliver the same pain to Rollins, and this would continue throughout the match. We see Rollins hit, 3 consecutive suicide dives, and then Balor runs Rollins' shoulder into the post from the edge of the apron, and Rollins lands by the barricade, and they let it pause for everyone to understand what the setup is, and Balor goes to powerbomb him into the barricade. Rollins stops it on the first try, but then after Rollins is knocked from the edge, Balor successfully power bombs him into the barricade as the role reversal from the injury spot at the last SummerSlam. There's a sling blade in the ring, and then a shotgun dropkick gets stopped as Rollins manages a super kick. Balor goes to an armbar, and that's broken by a pair of buckle bombs from Rollins. Rollins then lands a frog splash for a 2, and Balor has a busted open mouth at this point in the match. Balor goes for the coup de grace, and it's thwarted with a superplex. And as he goes for the Falcon Arrow, Balor has an inside cradle counter. Both are down. The crowd is applauding this. And then there is a missed coup de grace, and Rollins hits the pedigree for a 2 count. And the crowd is pretty loud at this point. But to me, it goes to another level when Damian Priest comes out. And now they are thinking like this is when the match is going to heighten. And there's a very believable chance that Damian Priest could either do an angle here or Balor could win at this point. So we get a lot of great near falls here, including Balor sending Rollins into the ropes after a kick out, and Damian Priest nails Rollins and sends him back towards Balor, who hits Rollins with the pedigree. And this near fall, dude, this might have been the loudest pop on the show.
Reminded me of the Sean Hunter Taker pedigree tease, remember,
with the pedigree and super
kick right into the pedigree. Yeah,
great spot. And Priest then waves Rhea and Dominic from the audience so they appear ringside, and Priest hands the case over to Balor, but Balor chooses to hand it back to him. And with this delay, Rollins runs into Priest and then rolls through, and he nails Balor with a curb stomp. Another huge near fall.
I don't know if he handed it back to him. Like Priest like put it on the mat for Balor to grab, but Balor,
I thought he handed it back to him. He had it in his hands.
Priest had it in his hands.
Balor had it in his hands.
Okay, so Balor. Sorry. So
Priest hands him the case, and then Balor chose not to use it.
Did he? Why would he choose not to use it?
I didn't put this together.
I thought he just like left it there, or like I thought Priest just shoved it into the ring for Balor to grab, but Balor didn't grab it in time before Rollins was able to curb stop him.
Okay, well, someone correct this. I thought he actually physically had it in his hands at this point. Okay. Regardless, it ends with a curb stomp to Balor into the briefcase on the floor. And with that, that gets to another huge near fall. They had a lot of creative near falls set up.
I thought that was the finish that you're talking about.
Oh, you're right. This was just a regular curb stomp for the near fall.
Okay.
Rollins then hits a dive to Priest on the floor and curb stomps Dominic, runs in, is hit with a sling blade and a shotgun drop kick. This time, Balor hits the coup de grace, another big near fall here. And Priest takes the case, distracts the ref as Balor's crawling towards it. And as he's crawling towards the briefcase, that's when Rollins curb stomps him on top of the briefcase in 18 minutes and 27 seconds. And afterwards, Damian Priest is looking at Balor and just shaking his head in disappointment. This was my toss-up between this and Lesnar and Cody. I thought both matches were just excellent. They really, to me, put this show over the top for me. They were excellent. I don't think you can just flip a coin of what.
How long was this one?
This was 18 and a half.
Yeah. I definitely felt like it. They really took their time with the pacing early on by, the story entirely is based off of Balor's shoulder injury from 7 years ago. And so they were able to use that to tell like a pretty, psychology based shoulder story that I thought was really well done. And captivating because, it had so much story depth attached to it. And every time Rollins was, Balor was going for like a buckle bomb, it felt significant. But the match completely shifted in tone into, towards telling the Priest Balor sort of a Money in the Bank jealousy story. And that was really, really well done. These audiences, myself included, love this tension now between Finn Balor and Damian Priest, and what they had this entire month of both of them wanting to go for Seth Rollins championship, and both of them trying to be accommodating for the other, while at the same time secretly either wanting the other person to fail. And I thought all of that played out in like sort of a wonderful like sequence throughout this match, where you had at once, obviously like Priest was coming out here. You don't know if he's here to cash in or if he's here to help Balor out. Turns out he was here to help Balor out, but in doing so, kind of cost Balor, or at least that's the ongoing tension that I think will be introduced. Like, but Priest, in trying to help Balor, or Balor instructing Priest to help him, ended up making Priest cost Balor by giving Rollins a weapon for Balor to stomp on his head onto. So they come up with brilliant ways of, I think, continuing to play with these sort of like relationship dynamics between these two members. Maybe a lot of people would have been disappointed at this outcome, because I think this would have been actually, a perfect chance to take the title off of Rollins, keep the belt on Balor, and continue that tension. But clearly they have other plans for Seth Rollins matches, and I do wonder how they will continue to tell this Finn Balor Damian Priest sort of a love-hate relationship now that Finn isn't necessarily going for the title.
Yeah, and I mean that was the whole setup, is that Balor gets the next chance here at SummerSlam, and then it's Damian's turn. So that's I think they have a lot of interesting aspects with the Judgment Day. They're doing it without the title in the group, but probably still tying the group to Rollins in some form or fashion.
Maybe you think so. Obviously, right? Because Priest is always going to be attached. But I mean, this has been like a really good build, I would say, for Balor and Rollins. I think it's taken Balor to another level, because it's made him serious. It's allowed him to cut some very serious promos that we haven't necessarily seen in a long time, and the matches have been really good too.
There was a Mike's Harder Lemonade spot with Alpha Academy and The Miz, and then Asuka, Charlotte Flair, and Bianca Belair for the Women's Championship. And as they were pushing on SmackDown, Flair is 5-0 at SummerSlam.
Mm-hmm.
So that was
new streak.
The new streak.
The one that they hopefully won't screw up.
Well,
actually, I guess it's already broken.
How does that
go.
work? Like,
it's already over.
It seems like it's gone.
All right.
So each are taking turns at the beginning. It's kind of a stalemate, and then Asuka hits a code breaker to Flair to stop a figure four onto Belair. All three women are down. Belair hits a DDT neckbreaker combo onto the two at the same time. We have Asuka landing big kicks onto the two. And then there's an Asuka lock on the ropes, and Flair boots her off. Belair tries for the KOD, and Flair lands on her feet, rotates for a suplex, and then Belair stops Flair, who is in a triangle from Asuka, and delivers a doctor bomb. The Asuka lock is applied from behind onto Belair, so they're doing a lot of different like three-way spots here. Flair goes to the top when Belair and Asuka are on the floor, and she goes for a moonsault onto it was Belair, and dude, she like totally cleared her. She landed.
I mean, that's the usual sort of Charlotte moonsault,
This one was just like, it was like skimmed her hair is how far she went over here. Nonetheless, she goes for figure fours to both of them at the same time inside of the ring. That gets stopped, and Belair is sent to the floor, and she starts holding her knee, and she's screaming, and then she starts to be helped to the back when Flair applies the figure eight onto Asuka, and Belair crawls back. Now, at this point, like this audience, they had not been really into this match, but when Belair crawled back, there was this huge pop to get behind Belair, who's got a damaged knee. And she comes to the, this is how you fix a torn ACL. Okay, you climb to the top rope, and you hit a 450 as Charlotte is bridged in her figure eight position and breaks up the submission. And this leads to the crowd just coming alive as she goes for the pin onto Flair after the 450. Flair then knocks Asuka off the apron, and she applies the figure eight to Belair. And Asuka returns, and with Flair upside down for the figure eight, she gets sprayed with mist in the face. And from there, Belair cradles Asuka and gets the pin in 20 minutes and 44 seconds. And the place pops for Belair's win. And then IYO SKY's music hits and everyone goes nuts. She comes down. Bayley is with her and attacks Flair and Asuka with the briefcase. Sky then nails Belair in the knee that's already injured and is waiting on the top rope for them to announce the cash in, and then hits over the moonsault, pinning Belair in 10 seconds. And this, last year it was the debut of these three together as a group with Damage Control when they confronted Bianca Belair. So here it is a year later, and they cost her the title, and IYO SKY is your women's champion. And Dakota Kai showing up to celebrate with them.
That was a really nice moment, and a wonderful
who is
surprise.
not ready to come back yet. She noted she is not cleared.
Yeah, the match certainly felt like it was a bit on the longer side because
this was late in the show, and they went
and the feud is cold. I don't think they put that much successful build towards it. It was sort of awkward, I would say, between the three for the most part, or just really not that engaging and interesting to justify a good chunk of that length. I also had the unfortunate sort of luck of sitting in front of some very drunk, some very misogynistic men. Then I was just throughout the entire match just having to listen to just some awful comments, and that's just one of the unfortunate things about watching wrestling live, and especially when you're watching a women's match that I think we don't realize just how easy of a target these sort of matches are, especially when the build is not interesting, and the criticism just goes towards just things I will never repeat on these airwaves. But it did cloud my sort of attention on the match a bit. But as maybe as cliche as the mid-match injury is, it worked completely for Bianca Belair here and took this match to a whole nother level. Got these audiences into it, and the rush to the finish I thought was absolutely spectacular. So they definitely got them by the end, but maybe a few minutes could have been shaved off of this.
It did go a little lengthy, but I would say the totality of this, I mean, it gave you one of if not the big moment on the show with the cash in. That was, that's one of the big stories coming out of the show.
And the knee story really well told to set that up. I think the cash in felt likely to me, just given how understated IYO's been. She lost to Zelina Vega last night. So, that's almost always a sign that perhaps something is coming. And also, you compare it to the Damian Priest Money in the Bank run, where they give you reminders every single week that Damian Priest might cash in. He might cash in. He might cash in. Whereas with IYO, it's been completely understated, which, given maybe the focus on these three and how much IYO has been in the background, kind of made it feel ripe for that surprise win.
What are the odds that Charlotte will continue to be promoted as a never been pinned at SummerSlam?
Yeah, I think it's good. Yeah, I think that technicality will help them out. But with IYO, she's sort of like a classic Money in the Bank winner, where she's a bit stronger than most who feel like Austin Theory, who got jobbed out endlessly before his failed attempt. But she's still, to me, kind of starting from scratch, where they haven't put so much character build around her. She had that great moment at Backlash, and a great moment at Money in the Bank. But in terms of just who IYO SKY is, I feel like there's still so much work to be done. But I think audiences are ready for it.
Yeah, I will tell you, at the press conference, these three, they came across as
the biggest baby faces,
the most likable baby faces that you would want to root for. I mean, it was just man, these three, they're fine heels, but I mean, you see them in just that kind of a light. I mean, these are three, they genuinely friends. Are great friends, and they have which will make the care for wonderful. Each other and heels. But nonetheless, so there you go. It was past midnight, and now it was time for tribal combat. So that meant an hour of entrances, and Jey Uso taking on Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship, and who would be the head of the table. So Reigns raises the beads in front of Jey to show what's at stake here. What's the real prize we're fighting for? So I mean, this was a long, drawn out match, and if I'm going to talk about the women's match that could have been shaved down, I mean, as much as people are into this story, 36 minutes was a lot for this match. When we talk about like what were the key parts of this match, and did 36 minutes be the required length to tell this story? Was every second optimal?
Right. Maybe there's more leeway, certainly for somebody like a Roman Reigns, who has kind of proven that every instance that he's on screen, people are attracted to, people will watch. Maybe you give him a bit more leeway, but did the match drag for you?
It did, yes.
Yeah, I felt like it was a pretty standard Roman Reigns like main event type of pace.
I thought it was like the layout was like what you get for these big epic bloodline matches. I thought this one, though, it did not have the heat that kind of sustained it that some of the other big matches have had. Like, I found this was a pretty exhausted crowd by the end of it. This is like, we're talking people that have been in their seats for over 4 hours at this point, if not more. And I think they've sat through a lot of lengthy matches, and this was one that I think where I think everyone knew that there's probably not just going to be a finality to this match until you get several appearances or a big angle, something, rather than just the first, I would say, 20-25 minutes until Solo Sikoa got involved.
Yeah, they did have tribal combat, which is essentially a hardcore match, to try to like maybe differentiate that pattern up. And I would say this might be like the most tame main event hardcore match that like you'll see in 2023. Certainly, it had the Roman pace where like they were taking their time with everything, and I don't even complain about that, because I think it's when you're this over, like, you can get away with everything, and conservation is, to me, almost impressive to see how much value somebody can get off of doing very little. But in terms of risk, like for a hardcore match, I mean, I watched the parking lot brawl like as I was waiting
in the press box.
So, well, I mean, there's a whole hour to kill, and God, like, just it's a world of difference, like how much people were doing for Rampage versus like how little these guys were actually doing for SummerSlam. And again, I hate to even compare like which is better. They're both good. It just means like but I am even more impressed that like they can get away with doing so little and still like give you 36 minutes of a main event.
Yeah, I mean, the crowd chanted for tables, and Jey obliged, and then it was just a procession of kendo stick shots. Jey managed a tope con hero to the floor, and then it's building things around the spear, and Jey offsetting Reigns. At one point, he hit an Uso splash for a 2 count. Then he got a chair. Then he got a pile of chairs from underneath the ring, and he was attacking Reigns. A table is set up in the corner, and there's one on the floor that led to Roman taking a Samoan drop from Jey, and he is put through the table on the floor. Jey then pulls out a strap, and he starts whipping Reigns, and they go into the crowd, and this is when Solo appears, and he attacks Jey. There were loud boos for this, and there's a spinning Solo that puts Jey through the table. They carry him back to the ring, and then Solo and Reigns are preparing for their Samoan Spike spear combo, but Jey sidesteps, and Reigns spears Solo by mistake, and Jey hits the spear for a big near fall. And dude, this crowd, they were, I don't want to say completely buying that Jey was going to win this, but they at least reacted for this near fall. And I do think that was a tough one that I think the audience, they just saw, they did not see Jey in the same way they saw Sami Zayn or a Cody, in terms of someone that they can at least suspend disbelief to truly believe could beat Roman Reigns. And that's going to get tougher and tougher when you are doing different opponent. And I think Jey, while I think he has really ascended to this role, he justifiably deserved this spot on the show. I don't know if this audience like saw him as, like, I think everyone knew Reigns is keeping this, but hopefully this is a fun ride in terms of the story evolution.
I think we're also existing in a Roman Reigns reign post Sami Zayn and Cody Rhodes. I think we're all of the impression now that if you weren't going to have Cody win it at WrestleMania, nobody stands a chance unless it's Cody Rhodes at the next WrestleMania.
Well, Jey starts to attack both with chair shots, including to the midsection of Reigns to weaken him for the spear. And Jey goes down on the floor, and Reigns puts his hand out for Solo to lift him up, but Solo doesn't help. And Solo is pissed. And this leads to Roman talking to Solo, and with his attention diverted, he is speared through the barricade by Jey. Jey follows with a super kick to Solo onto the desk and splashes Solo through the desk, spears Reigns in the ring, and then hits the Uso splash. We have a new champion. We have a new tribal chief. 1, 2, and Jey is yanked to the floor by a man whose face is hidden in a hoodie. Who could it be? Was it Rikishi? Did he do it for The Rock? No, it was Jimmy. And Jimmy reveals himself, and he just looks at his brother. And dude, Jey is emotional. He's looking down. He's in tears. And we hear "fuck you, Jimmy" chants from the crowd. And then I like that he paused, he waited, and then he executes and super kicks Jey in the face. Reigns is surprised by all of this. They make it up that this was not some grand plan. This was Jimmy acting on his own. And then Reigns proceeds to spear Jey through the table in the corner and wins the match in 36 minutes and 4 seconds. I would not have complained about the length if this audience was fully into this, but I think the audience felt the length of this one, and it did take it down a notch for me. But you did get a pretty big ending in terms of an angle to come out of this. Not stunning that you had Jimmy turn on Jey. That was certainly thrown out there, but I thought they executed that aspect of it well. And I do believe like Jey can hang as a top singles act. I think that was he had a very good match here, but this to me was I think the time affected it, and it was really drawn out for me. It was slow at points.
Yeah. I think it was extra slow because like you know, Roman matches to me usually have like the benefit of commentary to do a lot of the heavy lifting, you know, because it is such a slower pace. And also I think oftentimes they'll do a lot of talking in ring, and we obviously didn't have that benefit watching live. But beyond that, I also do think maybe a position like this, while I think Jey was absolutely the right guy for this, and it's really amazing how much he's achieved as a predominantly tag team wrestler to be able to, you know, headline a hot, justified main event for SummerSlam. I do think like he still shows maybe some deficiencies in either charisma, or I would even say confidence in playing this sort of like high profile role when I compare it to, you know, Roman's defenses against Sammy or Cody, and that's at the very top, you know. But I feel there's still something lacking out of a Jey Uso, you know, singles performance for me to really feel like he could be the next guy. And I that's not to say it can't come with time. You know, this is a guy who spent his entire life playing, you know, tag team wrestler, and it looks like now they'll be, you know, having to stick with singles runs with Jimmy or with Jey Uso. So I look forward to seeing how he'll progress, both as a promo and also as, you know, a singles wrestler.
And whether this brings Owens and Zayn back into the bloodline story, and that's like Jey has nobody else, and now, you know, you have Sammy, and you know the idea, will Kevin Owens
yeah, but like I almost get the impression like Sammy has said that Sammy and Kevin have both said that they're done with the bloodline. Are they truly done? You know, is this like spinning sort of the wheel for like again by bringing them back in, by bringing the same characters back in?
Here's how it goes. Okay, Kevin, I know we were done with the Usos, but it's this or the Viking Raiders. What do you want to do?
Yeah, it could be that. Or does Solo move over to join Jey?
They certainly tease that aspect as well, of like Solo being sort of more divided coming out of this. So there's some interesting stuff of where they can go.
But how long can we play these musical chairs for? You know, with these same characters.
Did you hear Paul Heyman? They're in the bottom of the third. Bottom of the third.
Yeah,
okay,
I guess
they have
so.
lots to do, lots to go.
I like the twist. I think like it's not unprecedented. I mean, like we've learned that Jimmy Uso in the past was against like the idea of like having Jey Uso be tribal chief or being main event Jey or whatever. He's been like, he's jealous brother. I think that's the, all the explanation that he really needs. So I look forward to that story. Obviously they're going to do a singles match between the two at some point, and we'll see how far that goes. But I also
which I would not do right away. I would hold off on that until it's a big match.
I think I'd also like some other characters to be like brought into their little universe. Who else can they elevate now at this point? The way that Sami Zayn like so perfectly fit into what they were doing.
I mean, you go before that, it's like Sami Zayn did not strike you as someone that would have fit into this story, and like there's certainly, I'm sure, a roster full of like interesting candidates that you could add some more dimensions to this story after you've kind of done the Roman Jey situation. Now you have like Jey can spin off with Jimmy in some form, where Roman ends up. And how many more big programs does Roman have this year? Like, you figure he's involved. Like, we have Payback next month, then Fastlane, Saudi Arabia, and Survivor Series. Those are the 4 big matches. And how is Roman handled throughout the last couple of months?
Yeah. Well, Bobby Lashley is becoming, a threat again. Although it seems like they might be heels with the Street Profits. I'm trying to think who else. Like, AJ is far from the title picture at the moment. Trying to think who else might be interesting. Could they do Sheamus, or is that too low? Could they do anybody who took part in the Slim Jim Battle Royal?
It would be tough. It would require some great promos and building towards that. I don't know if Rick Boogs is ready for that.
No, I don't think so either.
So that was SummerSlam. I think overall, I would still give this a. Well, where do you go on this?
So, it's not like a unanimous, like the fact that I even have to consider it tells me that like I didn't like the show as much as like either WrestleMania.
I'm better with numbers than I am like thumbs up.
I would give it like a 7 out of 10.
That feels about right. I thought the 2 matches with Cody against Lesnar and Finn against Seth Rollins were excellent. I thought those were 2 outstanding matches, and the next tier I would have sort of the Gunther, Drew, Ricochet, Logan Paul, and I put Tribal Combat below those 2.
Yeah. Of a Roman Reigns match, like it wasn't sort of like the magic that I think we've experienced with maybe the program in the past. I too felt like I thought the Cody Brock match was very special, maybe in its sort of like minimalism. And it was just a very impressive feat just to be able to get those sort of reactions. I think a lot of people coming out of the arena will be talking about LA Knight. He feels like definitely the it guy. It's the same feeling that we've had, like that I've had, with Bray Wyatt coming out of like that New Orleans WrestleMania, or like even Rob Van Dam coming off of like one of those early Invasion SmackDowns. They thankfully seem like they're actually capitalizing on LA Knight right now. So that might be what the SummerSlam might be remembered for. Unfortunately, IYO SKY had a big night, but the reception to both women's matches were on the lower side of things on this particular show. In general, because the 3-way like ended up being really good. But the one I would say negative mark on the show that you could definitely say was unfortunately Shayna and Ronda, and that was just maybe bad choice of match type.
We went over. I think there were several factors that affected that you could certainly go to the drawing board with. All right. It is nearly 4 a.m, so we're gonna zip through some feedback that people have left us on the forum. We will get to what we can here, but we are hitting our expiration.
We actually have some super chats here, and a lot of you, like over 200 something of you are actually watching live this late. So some of you guys, I wonder where you even live. But thank you for that, and let's go to some of your super chats right now. First, let's go to her niece De La Cruz, who says that was the quietest I've ever heard. 59,000, he says in brackets, 50,000 to be exact, people during the MMA match. Yeah, they were quiet, definitely. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of people were using it as their bathroom break, either because of their lack of interest in the feud itself, or their just lack of reaction to the match. It was a big come down match for sure, coming off of the Cody and
for as long as this show was, it's not like one of those WWE shows where you're saying like, man, there was just so much just excess in terms of like tons of video packages or backstage. There was nothing backstage other than like that Mike's Hard Lemonade spot. Like there was nothing. It was just match.
A couple video packages, either to promote the matches or like
it didn't feel like anywhere near normal in terms of the usual like inventory load. Like this was like for your 4+ hours, it was like almost like over 90%.
It was tight. It was tight. Yeah. Thank you for the super chat, Hernice. Let's go to Brian Dillon, who sends €10. Thank you, Brian. He says, finally, being a dairy farmer in Ireland has paid off. Get to listen to you guys live for once. SummerSlam was no good, by the way. The opener was good, and the cash-in was the highlight.
So. I can't say it was no good.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Let's go to Andy, who says the main event prevented the show from being outstanding. That story jumped the shark and is past its best conclusion. Cody should have won. Lazy creative.
I can't agree with that. It's like you might not have enjoyed the main event. That story has hardly jumped the shark.
Just look at the ratings.
The number, like that is the hottest story in pro wrestling, and it's like you might not be a fan of some elements of it, but it is like that is the straw that is turning the drink in WWE.
I will say, like, I do agree that I don't think I part of me wonders if it's peaked, you know, but that's also because I think both the Sammy and the Cody stories were so strong heading into WrestleMania season, and I'm confident that heading into WrestleMania season again, especially if it's going to be Cody, that'll be challenging again. You're going to reach that peak again. You're just past this area. You're just in this little area where I just don't think people are buying, you know, a title change whatsoever. And maybe it's a bit of a staleness of like, you know, those musical chairs. People, this guy's turning on this guy, and then this guy's turning on this guy, and then Solo's going to turn on the other guy. So there's a little bit of that, but I think it's hardly like jump the shark territory.
Dude, the stuff of Jey leaving and all of that, like that's been very strong stuff. And it might not be that it's the story of like who's going to unseat Roman for the title, but there's certainly intrigue in the drama of like where the key characters are going, the breakup of the bloodline. Like
we also have to remember that like what we're watching right now between this and what Cody's doing with Brock, these are really, they'll never call it this, but these are meant to be almost like placeholder programs so that they can bridge this gap between this last WrestleMania and this WrestleMania. And in the case of Brock, I think they've done tremendously with Cody, and I think they've done great with Roman and Jey as well, you know, as like, you know, what are essentially B feuds, but you know, so that you're keeping those two apart from each other. I think they've actually been over delivering in many ways. Let's go to Sam, who says, thank you for this super chat, Sam. He says, just know I appreciate the both of you more than you know. Well, thank you, Sam. That's very nice of you to say. Thank you for staying up with us. All right, let's go to some feedback from forum.postwrestling.com, which is available to all of our patrons. And again, those of you listening to us live, maybe who don't know what we're about, we are a pro wrestling website and series of podcasts run predominantly through our supporters on Patreon, which is postwrestlingcafe.com. If you sign up $6 a month, you get a bunch of bonus shows, including G1 reviews for every single G1, Collision Course, which is our AEW review, coming out tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern with Kate and Nate, and also Rewind to SmackDown every single Friday with me and John talking about SmackDown, plus other bonuses, including our road trip podcast that we just put out, talking about our great time so far in the city of Detroit.
All right, we'll do a few here. Jake from the Windy City. SummerSlam was a mixed bag of some good matches and some just okay. Cody and Brock was a near perfect conclusion. Logan and Ricochet both had a decent outing. By the way, Logan hopping on a plane in warp speed and actually traveling from Detroit to Dallas and arriving to the fight on time was insane. Slim Jim giving LA Knight the good luck charm sure made me happy. Main event was not great. It was not well paced, and the finish was a stinker. Just a thumbs in the middle for such a high standard that Triple H puts on for PLEs.
Let's go to Fairuz from Malaysia, who says, aside from IYO's cash in, LA Knight winning the Battle Royal and Cody winning clean over Brock, this was an average SummerSlam. Logan, Ricochet, and Gunther Drew did not meet my lofty expectation, while Seth and Finn had a fine match. Shayna and Ronda worked hard, but the crowd was not into it, and I do feel that the match does not fit the stadium vibe. The three-way women's match was okay, but Charlotte's sloppy offense took me out of it a little. The main event match pacing was terrible. Way too slow. I even had a micro sleep during the match, and the turn by Jimmy just made the Bloodline storyline jump the shark. thumbs in the middle for me.
All right, we go to Cody from Maine. I'll admit to being a wet blanket with my feedback. That show didn't do it for me at all. The Lesnar Rhodes story, or lack thereof, ends as it began, nonsensically, with Cody not getting disqualified for using the stairs and Brock still endorsing him at the end despite getting cheated. It's a shame. This feud had a lot of potential. Then there's the 3 men's title matches, all of which to me had lame duck challengers. Gunther's reign isn't ending before he breaks the record. Rollins losing the belt that was essentially made for him after less than 3 months didn't seem likely either. And then there's the main event. Dark Side timed their Bash episode. Well, this week, because swerve, bro, this was a plotting match with a hilariously bad ending. Jimmy was sent to the hospital by Roman and Solo a month ago, but the idea of his brother being champion is worse. Is it totally out of character? Maybe not. Is it satisfying? Not to me. He thinks it jumped the shark. That's the big buzz.
Interesting. Okay. Well, maybe we're in the minority here. Let's see what Nick from Boston says. He says, a good but not great show for me. Every match delivered in what was expected, but nothing really felt like it went above and beyond. Jimmy being the Kane to Jay's Abel is a shock and awe moment, but it does leave me with a bit of a sour taste in my mouth following a main event of that length and pace. Roman hasn't won a match clean since he beat Matt Riddle back in June of 2022, I think. Hopefully, with this latest twist, we get to see a bit of a shift in his match formats as new non-bloodline challengers get introduced, or he inevitably takes on Solo.
No, it's from New York. So I understand this was the first pay-per-view in America since WrestleMania, and judging by how the crowd sounded on TV tonight, WWE should consider moving all pay-per-views abroad. The Usos, during their interview with Ariel Helwani last month in London, said that their dream was to face each other at WrestleMania in a 1-versus-1 match. The opener, Seth match, and the cash-in were great. Everything else was pretty flat to me compared to the high standards WWE has set their shows with this year. I agree, White Castle is terrible.
Let's go to Muggin, who says, a mixed bag. Some good, some head scratching. Rousey Baszler did bring things down a little. Here's what worked. Cody Brock 3 eclipsed the first 2 matches they've had. LA Knight got his moment in the sun. Io became women's champion. Finn's paranoia clouded his judgment. And Tribal Combat had a Kane and Abel twist. I felt sick seeing Jimmy betray Jay when it counted.
Okay, and the last one here from Click. I'm a little surprised by some of the feedback. In person, this was an excellent show. Opener was awesome. Ricochet was very over. I loved Cody and Brock. Felt like a David versus Goliath story. Battle Royal was meh for the first half, as in person, it's very hard to see what's even going on when the ring is full. Ronda and Shayna was a giant flop. Lots of boring, and this is boring, clap, clap, clap chants. Finn and Rollins was my match of the night. Gunther and Drew was very good. Triple Threat Women's was in a tough spot. It was getting super late, and the crowd just wanted the main event to come. And the last match, Tribal Combat, crowd was very into the performers, but once they went to the floor, you couldn't see anything. And the Jimmy reveal was botched by the stupid speaker system, as half the crowd couldn't even see his face. See picture below. Crowd hated the finish, as did I. I have to imagine Jay is going to team with Sammy and KO now and go up against Jimmy, Roman, and Solo. Gives a 7.5 out of 10. Great crowd tonight, and just a very fun show in person.
Right. I guess they only had 2 big screens up top, and if you're sitting in a seat where the speakers were blocking the screens, that kind of sucks.
Maybe they thought it was Logan Paul's buddy who was just hanging out all night.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, that you're gonna run into that issue in every different arena. That's not really something I would blame the WWE for. Maybe you can argue they should put up more screens elsewhere. But sometimes it's just luck of the draw what seats you get.
Okay, well, that's going to wrap up our SummerSlam review. I want to thank everyone for their super chats as well as feedback up at forum.postwrestling.com, and everyone who has checked out our work over the weekend. We did put up a road trip podcast for members at postwrestlingcafe.com and video.postwrestling.com that you can check out. Also, we have interviews up at the Post YouTube channel with Ricochet, Shayna Baszler, and we did several others that will be coming out in the days and weeks to come. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Best way is to go subscribe on YouTube, and then you will always be up to date on the videos that we are putting out up on the Post Wrestling YouTube. We are live Monday and Wednesday on the YouTube channel after Raw, after Dynamite, and for Cafe members, live after SmackDown each Friday night. So it's been a fun trip to Detroit. Wai and I are on our way home because our families need us. So that is going to be our trek out of beautiful Detroit and back to Canada. So Wai, thank you as always for managing to keep the technology all in place. And I just go where you tell me. So thank you as always.
And thank you, John. And we'll talk to you tomorrow or
Did I-
Monday, I should say.
Yeah.